So just to kick off, I'm going to go over, the kinds of loans there are and some of the differences. Now, talking about what Skylight Ventures can offer you, and it's under the umbrella of what we call microloans, though that category of microloans has gotten a bit more complex as we've launched some new products. But we will talk about larger sources of finance that are available and more accessible to early stage founders and entrepreneurs. I'm going to look just briefly at a little comparison on cost of finance from some of the loan providers that we'll be talking about. Skylight is no interest loans, but as we know in the market, that's not always the case. Give you a bit more of that detail on Skylight's program and some of the different products that we're managing, and then end with some considerations when you are researching larger finance in the market. And then we'll end with a bit of time for question and answers, and hopefully some discussion as well. At the end of the Skylight Loan Program overview, that's where we will bring Anil back in and have just a bit of a chat about his experience with the Skylight program. So as Anil said, we are looking at loans which do need to be repaid. So you will get a lump sum of capital that you will, use for business purpose, and that will need to be repaid, often with interest. And I've put a flag there to always watch out for other fees and costs whenever you are taking a loan. The good or bad part of a loan, obviously, is that the repayments are fixed over a predictable time period that you agree to. There's no ups and downs based on the performance of your business. And the flip side of that, then, of course, is once you repay the loan, you've repaid the loan, and you can go about your business as you want. Other types of investment do often take control or ownership out of your business. So it's something to think about. Now, I think working with TERN and even working with Skylight, at Skylight, the loans do come with quite a lot of other types of support and resources and things as a early stage business owner. Now, in the wider market, a loan might just be a loan, and you can't really expect the lender to really be that involved in other forms of support for your business. However, on the other hand, we will kind of look at some resources and some places where actually you might want to ask and really learn what other benefits and support a lender can provide in addition to just providing capital. Just to briefly kind of go over an intro on loan types quickly. We'll start at the top, which is really out there. There's loans that are able to support business needs, business use, and then there's a set of loans out there that are really intended for personal use. That's really important because we don't want to be using loans meant for personal use for a business purpose. They're just not set up well for supporting, especially a young and growing business. Personal loans that you are either familiar with or that you might come across, they tend to be short. They tend to have small amounts of capital, and they tend to be quite expensive because people that are willing to lend for personal reasons are actually taking a lot more risk than when you're lending to a business which is producing income. So they tend to be more expensive as a result. And a lot of people taking personal loans are using them for short, kind of urgent or emergency personal needs. So the loan is set up for that kind of thing. So please be very wary about evaluating loans and whether they are meant for business purpose. Now, the stage of the business also, there's different loans out there within business loans that are geared for different stages of the business. Now, Skylight Ventures was launched under the sort of gap out there that allowed very early stage and even pre sort of trading enterprises to access a little bit of capital in order to test and develop their sort of initial trading strategy. Today, we are offering capital up to 2,500, and that is considered sort of that micro loan category. It's a very, very small business loan for a specific purpose. Now, the sort of full launch, full kind of startup loan process that would kind of go beyond that micro stage. We're going to call the startup loans because there's actually a very kind of big, well-known program out there called the UK Startup Loan Program. But you'll often see sort of startup, new business, and those are going, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, and even 20,000 pounds to support that sort of large scale startup of an enterprise. And then there's the last category that's really fueling growth once you have a good amount of history in your business and you're ready to just inject quite a lot of capital at a larger scale to help it grow. And that's more what Fred was talking about with his breakout. Oops. Now, I want to talk just really briefly and intro the idea of accessibility. So, TERN and Skylight are working with founders from refugee backgrounds. They're working with very early stage enterprises, and they are working with people facing a lot of different barriers out there, including barriers across language, navigating kind of new systems in the business world, and all of that. So it's just, yeah, something to think about is what might a source of finance that might be accessible to others in the UK are going to be less accessible to those starting new enterprises, new businesses with refugee backgrounds. Another thing so within that, there's like basically kind of three levels that I look at when I think about accessibility versus affordability or the cost of finance. So we have our mainstream lenders. So most of you will have bank accounts. Most of those banks do offer business loans, business finance. Now those loans we would say are usually very affordable. So they usually have the lowest cost of finance that you can find for business purpose. But they're also going to probably be the least accessible in terms of the types of businesses that they're going to invest in. First of all, they're not looking at small amounts, which really are too expensive for them to manage with the interest they're charging. They are looking for businesses that are more of like a sure thing. They have a long track record. They really their business models that are not, atypical or anything like that. They're quite common businesses that banks can understand. So that's a very high level of of affordability, but low accessibility. Then we have our high cost credit, which does tend to be more in that personal finance sector. But that's going to be your credit cards and a set of private lenders out there that we call high cost credit lenders, which actually are very accessible. In fact, you may have many coming after you to try to get you to apply for loans. And if you look in the details of those loans, they tend to be very unaffordable. So they're very accessible, easy to apply for, but they're probably very expensive. And the cost of actually paying for that finance could far surpass what your business could reasonably be expected to earn. So they can be quite dangerous. The last category tries to be more accessible and more affordable than the other options out there. And we're going to call that community finance, community lending institutions, which Skylight is one of those in that sector. But in the UK, there's actually a number of these kinds of lenders that are working with businesses that wouldn't traditionally be approved by banks. and they might charge a bit more interest, but they're a lot more open-minded and a lot more supportive of the type of businesses that are being started by those in the TERN and Skylight communities. So that's what we like to kind of focus on. Just to take a bit more detail on the idea of accessibility challenges, and kind of what I mean by that in more specifics. So, you know, in the UK, credit scores are very important. Basically, a bank and other sources of finance will put your details into the system, and one of what we call the credit bureaus will kind of look at what your experience has been with finance in the UK and give you a score, and that score can kind of support or undermine your ability to access finance. Many people think, oh, I've never had a problem with finance, but actually in the system, if you have very limited history, that can actually undermine your ability to get finance because it makes you a bit of an unknown element in the system. Complicated and bureaucratic loan processes often undermine people's ability to access finance. They're asking questions that are maybe hard to understand. They're asking for documents that you might not easily have. They're asking, you know, follow-up questions that are hard to navigate. So people might drop out of the finance system because of that. As early stage businesses, as startups, you have limited kind of history of trading, and that's going to be a disadvantage to getting finance. You might not have a business plan or financial plan looking at the future plans for your business that meet the expectation of lenders in the UK. Language, as I said, can prevent you from being able to get approved for loans because you might just not communicate the information in the way that a bank or a finance lender is expecting. And then, of course, lack of options besides traditional interest-bearing loans is a problem. Culturally, religiously, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that don't want to take an interest-bearing loan, so that can be a problem. So these might be items that you relate to as early stage founders. And I'm just here to say that across the UK, honestly, these are challenges that many face. Small and medium-sized enterprises, I mean, the amount of finance going to them is at a historic low in the UK. Startup funding in general is, you know, actually declining as investors become more afraid of risk after the cost of living crisis. And there's been studies that, you know, there's multiple barriers to getting approved for finance. Some of those being language, you know, like different personal, cultural, and economic factors of different people applying for loans. So it's a widespread problem. If you could in the Zoom chat, if you could put down some of, I guess, some of the issues you've had accessing finance, and then maybe we can look back at that at the end of the time during the Q&A discussion, just to hear about people's experiences. Now, Skylight is what we call in the microloan category. We're a sister company to TERN, offering interest-free business microloans up to 2,500. And then some of you will know that's an increase up from £1,000, which was our kind of starting maximum for finance. Now, beyond, and I'll go into more detail about that loan in a minute, but I also want to flag some other sources of finance that are out there. The British Business Bank has been running a government-backed and supported loan program called the Startup Loan Program for enterprises that have been trading for 3 years or less. And they're offering relatively large amounts of finance, up to £25,000 at a fixed interest rate of 6%, which is considered fairly low for the market. and they will lend to sole traders or companies. It's actually, they consider it a personal loan for business purpose. And with that though, you would need to pass that credit check that we talked about. So it can make it more or less accessible depending on your history with finance. After that, we've been engaging quite a bit with a nonprofit organization in the UK called Purple Shoots, which is an example of a small an enterprise lender for smaller businesses that are lending in more the £3,000 to £5,000 range. Now, because the amount they're lending is smaller, and they also kind of take a lot of risk, they're quite flexible in that they don't rely on credit scores and other types of things that other lenders rely on. Their interest rate is a bit higher, but we've found that they have been quite open-minded in terms of supporting a number of startup and early stage businesses, which is quite interesting. And then the last resource I just want to flag is that there is a network called Finding Finance, which is run by the Responsible Finance Network in the UK. And this is a network of all different types of lenders that are offering much like larger sources of finance for UK businesses that have trouble getting approved for business finance from banks, traditional banks. And many of them actually are based on geography. So we'll be putting out a resource where you can actually put your postcode, or you can look at your region and see which of these lenders might be specifically serving the area where you live. Others are serving nationally businesses. So it's something to include when you are researching sources of finance. So yeah, we'll be sending out sort of more resources on how to look at this later. Now, in terms of cost of capital across these non-Skylight lenders, because Skylight is interest-free, I just want to quickly just show what that looks like. So 6%, if you borrowed £2,000 as an example, you would be paying £127 over 24 months. Which is fairly reasonable in the market for a business loan. You of course would want to ensure that your business income would be making, you know, more than enough to cover that, but it's not unreasonable. Now with Purple Shoots, you would repay £2,580. So you can see the increase that difference in interest makes. And again, that's where your business plan is really important, because if your income from the business isn't going to cover that, then it's going to have to come from your personal resources, which is not what we want. So that's why it's really important to know what your cost of finance is. And then the Finding Finance network has such a kind of a wide range of different lenders. So they have from 12% to 25%, and that's going to have you repaying somewhere in kind of in between the startup loan and the Purple Shoots loan categories. Oops. Oops, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so we've launched our first, so our microloan product is now up to £2,500 in interest-free credit. I'm going to just talk a bit more about Skylight Ventures and kind of what we're offering in the microloan process. We see our benefit being that we're fast. So we approve loans every Wednesday. And if you apply, even if you're not completely sure about your application, you can apply, and I actually will be able to have a meeting with you, and we can kind of discuss what the best use of the loan could be, if Skylight or another type of finance might be better for you, and that kind of thing. All of our loans are assessed by a panel of lived experience refugee founders from within the TERN and Skylight communities. So the actual like business idea and the use of the loan, the first look at that in the application is this panel, and they just have a better idea of kind of what works in terms of the startup startup area with founders in this community, which we like to have in the process. Lastly, we try and keep the application easy, so it's pretty quick. We allow a lot of the key questions to be answered by video or audio or text, and we don't require a credit score to access a loan. Now, this year, we've kind of broken our service down into 3 different products. So we have some entrepreneurs that essentially are trading. So they haven't yet started trading. They have a very rough idea on their business idea. And within a week, pretty much, we can get them um, up to £500 in credit. And that will allow those founders not to take on a very big commitment in terms of the repayment, but still allow them to sell some product and just see how it works. If I gave you a quick example, I worked with one entrepreneur who essentially was in the middle or just about to start the eBay e-commerce program with our TERN coach, Aussie. She needed to go into the program with some stock that she could use for her eBay shop as she was setting it up, but she really had no other kind of information or business plan beyond that. And so she was quickly eligible for a £500 loan to get that stock. We knew that she would be getting support from a coach, and it was kind of the perfect situation for a first step loan. Next, we have our launch loan, which is up to £1,000, and that is really where you're testing your business idea, but with really enough of a business plan to be able to develop it into something that's going to be basically trade. You already have a vision for how it will trade in the marketplace. You kind of know where the customers will come from. You know who your competition is. You know what you want to charge, usually because you've already worked with a coach and you've kind of passed that part of the early stage development, and you're ready to launch your loan. And for that, there's £1,000 of capital that mostly just requires bank statements, some extra detail about how you plan to use the loan. And if I gave you an example of that, we had we had an entrepreneur that pretty much had already worked with a coach to build a proper business, a small, let's say a simple business plan with a bit of some targets for the future in terms of amounts they would sell in terms of an initial food business. And they'd already asked the council for permission to trade. They'd already kind of found a place in a market where they would be selling their food, and they just needed that £1,000 to buy the equipment, I think pay for insurance and things like that. So this loan was perfect for them. And they can always go back to their coach and get more kind of support and help, but they've already gotten the initial support that a lot of the TERN programs offer. The last and newest product is our Boost loan. So this is offering up to £2,500 in capital. And this is where those that have already started trading, probably in a very simple way, they've started trading, they've started earning some income, they can then come and they can increase their loan balance to £2,500. So we ask that, if you've taken a launch loan, that you start to repay, you let the income come in, and then you can come back and we can increase your balance up to £2,500. This is really intended for people who have registered as a company, though we can make some exceptions on that. We do want to see a proper 12-month kind of target or financial plan for the business. So basically what you expect to sell in the future over the next 12 months to show that you've thought about that. And we need to see that your business has produced income over the previous 3 months. So we need a little bit of history of income and that sort of forward-looking plan. And if I give an example of that, I worked with an entrepreneur at TERN recently that was profitably selling, basically repairing and reselling mobile phones online. And as the next step, they really wanted to open a physical space, and they needed like a larger amount of capital to outfit or get the space ready. So they increased their loan. So I think they had like £500 left of the first loan, and they increased it up to 2,500 in order to be able to set up the little shop that they had rented for the next stage in the business. And for that, we want to see obviously the financial plan and the proof of the revenue are the key bits. So broadly, everyone in the room may know this already, but in terms of who can apply, you do need to be a founder from a refugee background, and you need to have permission to work in the UK, which comes with most forms of leave to remain in the UK. We do have our application process in English. So some may be fortunate enough to have a coach that speaks their mother language, but in general, we need to run the program in English. So you do need to have that basic competency, and you must have a business support coach who can provide a reference. So in terms of what you need to do to apply, the first step alone is very basic. So I think it's just a short list of questions on your personal, what your personal income is now, what you want to use the loan for, what your business is called, and that sort of thing. And the only supporting document you need is your ID. Our full launch loan is a bit more of a bit more detail about the finances of your business, and a more detailed explanation and some evidence or proof on the use of the loan. So you have to show us how you know how much the different items or services you would buy, how you know what the cost is. And we require 3 months of bank statements, which is required before we could approve that loan. And the boost loan is pretty much really that. Yeah, we just need evidence that you have been, making profits over the last 3 months. And we also need to see that 12-month future-looking financial plan that I mentioned. And your business should be registered as a company at that point. Required at all stages, again, is this coach reference. So if you are not working with a coach or you haven't worked with a coach recently, um, please, yeah, please talk to me because I can still match you with a coach, and you can still apply. We can match you with a coach, and you just won't be approved until after you have that meeting with a business coach. So we can overcome that, but it's still required. Some things that make a borrower unsuccessful. Just I think people are often wondering like what could result in being declined for a loan. So I worked with an entrepreneur that was a jewelry maker. They wanted to buy a specific piece of equipment to make the jewelry kind of faster and at lower cost. I could see he was very experienced. He had lots of experience before coming to the UK. I could see the equipment he wanted. It was very obvious. I saw the website where it was being sold. But there were a few factors that prevented this person from being approved. First of all, the equipment was way more than £1,000, and he didn't have any plans to be able to afford the gap. So right there, Skylight Finance probably wasn't the best for his situation. We saw that the business had been registered for a long time, but he actually had struggled to find any customers. So that was a bit of a concern, whether the business model was a good one. And the final thing was when I did the financial review and spoke to him about debt, he signaled that he had a lot of credit card debt already, which really prevented us then finally from approving him. And we referred him back to his coach, who worked with him on other options and suggesting some debt management planning in order to get back on track. So we're going to take a few minutes and just hear from Anil on his experience with the Skylight loan because he did take a loan. Thanks for doing this, Anil. I'm just going to ask a few questions just to kind of guide the conversation about your experience with Skylight Finance. But yeah, I think just to kick off is just to give a really high level what's important to know about your business, and then I guess what the experience was like looking for finance and then coming to Skylight as a source of finance.
Uh, Thank you, Brian. I just remember from this workshop today that we had the exact same workshop last year. And I remember I saw you for the first time in person last year when I had just started at December last year. I knew I was
Hmm.
just playing around with just 3 or 4 hats. And I had that concrete idea, which we talked about today. But obviously there was no money. And I recently submitted my account to accountant. I saw that I put £50, first £5 to business account, and then I put another £50 just to create that cycle. But I had just after the session we had last year on accessing loans, I exactly remember Laila was there last year who she gave her experience. She shared it. And then I started preparing my application with my mentor and with coach then. And I think it was probably spring last year when I submitted my application and I started to receive the funding, which was really game changing in my business because at the beginning of the journey of Utopia, the company I launched the of selling fashion products, it basically I struggled because I didn't have much sale on day one, on day two, on first month and second month. So I think the money that came in, I basically used it like a working capital, and that's where it changed, and it changed to an extent that that cycle has never stopped since then. So it just keeps growing, growing, and it's been great for my business.
That's amazing. I mean, many would say like £1,000 doesn't sound like a lot of capital, and a lot even some people just don't apply because they don't know how £1,000 can help. So I guess would you say then that you found a way to make £1,000 useful to you?
I think I had the same feeling last year when I heard on the screen that the only amount you could get is 1,000. I said, oh, at least I need 10,000. I remember it's on the recording. I said, at least I need 10,000. But but I thought, okay, this could help. So what the strategy I did in my business was I got 1,000. By the time I received 1,000, I had already identified one product that was selling regularly. So I have like a variety of products of hundreds of them. So what I did at that time was I only invested that 1,000 into getting stock of the same item that's selling every day, that's selling fast, and I knew that it's going to sell, which was not a very easy decision because I thought maybe I will never sell them and I will forever have these boxes of different things with me. But the good thing is I started selling those products, and because I had everything in stock, so I didn't need to go to the wholesaler or order them online every time I get an order. That means I click the option to say my company is delivering next day delivery. If you order by 4 o'clock, you're gonna receive the item by next day, like by noon time or anytime. So that's when I started to get orders, and I started to sending those orders, and I got feedbacks, reviews, and within a month, it was 4 times the amount that I initially applied to receive the loan. And that gave me like the working capital. So I just kept selling and selling and selling. And now I think I've sold hundreds of that product specifically. And still my business relies basically on that same product line. So it's been really
Amazing.
game changing.
Wow, amazing. And I mean, I went over a bit the application process and what we require at Skylight for a loan. Can you just, I guess, give your assessment on how the process was for you and in terms of getting the money and then starting to repay?
I think overall I found it very easy and straightforward because I spent months of doing research on accessing finance, and that those are very tricky. But I remember when I submitted my application, I consulted with my coach and mentor because I thought it might be a very complicated process. However, when I applied, I honestly did not ask for feedback from them because it was just so easy and straightforward. I knew everything about the business, so I submitted it and I received the funds immediately as well. I think the communication overall was good. I think that grace period itself is very good. So you have access to working capital for not just the time that you receive the money, you also have that grace period. I don't know if it's still valid,
Hmm.
but that just gave you extra money. So with the sales that you do, you have like 2 months plus the month you receive it. So it's 3 months of having the amount, which I think is could just generate more sales, more money for you. And by then you feel very comfortable paying back because you pay back in small portions. So
Yeah. No, that's good. Thank you for flagging that. Yeah, so all of our loans, when you first receive them, there's 2 months where you won't make any payments. Then you will repay a monthly installment. Um, and the timeline is up to you to choose. So the maximum is 24 months, but you can pay, some pay really quickly over 6 months, so they can they can get the capital again from the beginning. Some people choose to spread it out over 24 months, and that really just depends on your kind of how your business is set up and what your option is. It's always interest free, so you don't pay more or less depending on how fast you pay. It's more if you, yeah, it just depends if you need those big lump sums of capital at certain times. Great. So I guess just in the future, I mean, I know your business has been one that's been growing quite quickly over the last year. I guess in the future, when your borrowing needs grow or funding needs grow beyond what Skylight can offer, what do you see as your strategy to fund the growth of your business?
I think the only thing I have learned throughout this year that I every week I still meet with my mentor is to know to have very good financial sheet. You have to track everything that's coming and going because you just don't know if things get busy, then it's going to get very busy and it's going to get very messy. And then it's so difficult to track down to go back into a couple of weeks ago. So I think it's best from the beginning, even if you don't have much to do, to track everything out. And I just use, I recommend using Google Sheet, for example, a very uh, basic version. It's not basic, but at least it's free, so you don't pay. And there you can track everything. You know what's coming, what's going. You can also even forecast things based on the sales you have. As much information as you have, it's just going to help you apply for more funding. But if not, it helps you understand and be very confident when you speak about your business. So that's the only thing I think, and the most important thing for any business in our level, like small businesses when they just want to start.
Okay. So would you say then your future growth will be fueled by the business itself, or do you think you'll go outside for additional funding or finance?
No, I think it depends on the nature of business. For example, in my business, I was lucky. I had good sales, so I always had capital
Hmm.
coming in and going. And B, I also won the startup award, which they gave me £10,000.
Hmm.
So that money came in, and I also had, which means I started to buy a lot more products. So now I
Yeah.
doubled up the variety of products, so that if something for summer is not selling, I now have winter stock, I have spring stock, I have even summer next year stock. So I'm somehow prepared throughout all the seasons. But if I choose to go into expand the business to, let's say, an in-person, like a shopping center, that's
Hmm.
where probably I will need a more funding. And obviously, I have insured my business. I have done it. I've done much more like professionally in trying to scale things up. And the more you want to do it, the more you want to grow your business. Obviously, you will have a need for finance. But if you have all these elements pinned together, then you can apply for more funding externally because once your business is selling and you know that it's bringing back profits or at least revenue, then you're not scared of applying even if you pay 10%, 12% interest if you go to the larger scale. That's my understanding.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, yeah, every business is unique, and some they just always need more finance, just the nature of growth, and some can just reinvest within the business and take small bits of funding. Sometimes you get special opportunities like the award that you mentioned, the grants, opportunities for social enterprises. Yeah, cool. Thanks. I think we will end it there. If you are considering then going beyond Skylight to getting a larger loan, there's basically like a few puzzle pieces that you want to get in order. I mean, getting your customer in order and getting your product or service in order, and using Skylight in turn to do that, I think is the biggest recommendation. building an evidence of history of trading. So, sorry, are you guys seeing my screen? Yeah, okay,
Yes.
good. Sorry, I just wasn't sure. Yeah, I think after getting those in order, having that evidence of success to date, to really make that business case for a larger loan to grow is going to be really important. So most other lenders besides Skylight are looking at your history, or at least expecting some history. Even the startup loan program, they're looking at a credit check, and they're going to ask kind of what you've done so far, even though it is intended to be a startup loan. So you just really can't take lightly that idea of tracking your income, your expenses, your sales, your customers, all of that, because it will help you in any sort of future funding. The last then is that detailed plan for the future. So it's going to be even more important that you can show in really intelligent sort of detail, like what you want a loan for, the impact it's going to have on your business, and what that means for the future. So that future plan, then, I would say, is the next kind of most important thing. I don't know when we're going to get cut off, but yeah, choosing a larger loan. Then I think this is just like I have like this pretty much the last slide. Then choosing a larger loan beyond those kind of four puzzle pieces then is then knowing exactly how much money you need and how much time you need to be able to increase the income that's going to cover your larger repayment. So all of those other lenders I talked about are going to be asking that question. And for your own protection, you're going to want to know that question. The last is also the stage of your business that we discussed at the top of the presentation, and your business model. So are you basically a social enterprise? Are you going to be an online business model? Are you an in-person or selling from a shop and that kind of thing? Your current finances and financial history, which basically needs to show that you can make larger repayments than you may have been making with the Skylight program. That's going to be very important in the UK finance sector, and especially the community finance sector. Affordability is massively important. So they want to know other debts you have and that you're repaying, your ability to repay a larger loan, and all of that. So it's very important. The last is then just like your preferences of a specific lender, and asking that lender if there's other advantages to working with them besides just getting capital, um, whether that's mentoring or advice or connections or anything like that, is quite important. And then I'm getting a message that think, I think they're gonna keep us open. So we're gonna keep going for a little bit. So sorry, then just because I went through that last bit a bit quickly. Um, in terms of like your preferences, and I think the point of this slide is really to give you the empowerment when you are looking at other sources of finance, because you don't want to jump into a larger loan after Skylight that is going to weaken or undermine your business. You want to go into a source of finance that will like empower and strengthen your business. So you need to really pay attention to then what they're offering you, and not just be happy that you're getting a loan, but that the payments make sense for you, the cost of the loan makes sense for you, and the lender themselves is kind of interested in supporting your business. Let's see, I think. Oh yeah. So this one, so putting together your application is just, typically you will meet with the lender. So all of the ethical social finance lenders, you will have the chance to meet with them and ask questions. You should not be afraid to have them run through all of the details of the loan like you do with Skylight when you apply for a Skylight loan, because all of those responsible lenders, Startup Loan, Purple Shoots, Finding Finance Network, they're all trying to make it easier and more accessible for you to get finance. They want to know about you. and your business, but then you also should make sure you know about them and what they want. After that, it's going to be a sort of another version of applying for a Skylight loan, which I went through that process. So you're going to have to give some personal information on the form. There's going to be some supporting documents that you're going to have to provide. You're going to have to provide that business plan and your financial summary. So the history of your business, the future of your business, that's so important. So that's the 12-month cash flow forecast. I did put in blue a little bit of an alert, and we can help you navigate this. But in the UK, everybody is entitled to a free copy of their credit history report. So you can go to that website, which is where I've kind of put together a small web page about credit scores and credit history. And you can look at your credit history and just make sure you're prepared, or if your lender is going to be looking at your credit history, if there's anything that is a surprise, like maybe something is what you have something like negative on your report or something. I mean, sometimes there's even mistakes on people's reports, and they have to get them fixed before they can apply for finance. So I did want to make sure to know that you are entitled to getting that credit history report. Oops. Sorry, yeah. Then the lender will review, ask you questions, which is what I do when I'm working with entrepreneurs as well. You may need to make changes. So they might say they don't feel comfortable with the amount of money that you're asking for based on your plans. They usually, yeah, will do an interview to just ask you to get a better understanding of your business before they can say yes or no. And I'm just going to close with just a few points. Um, these are kind of coming from TERN, but they are quite interesting. So what is normal for a loan? As I said, like around 6% or less is great in terms of an interest rate. Skylight is 0%, but that's very limited. We have small loans, and we can only support so many entrepreneurs. Under 10% is not uncommon. And then when you see interest over 10% is where you want to make sure that your business plan and your income strategy will be able to sort of cover that cost. Yeah, you'll need to meet the eligibility criteria of the lender, and you might have to pass a credit check, which looking at your credit history report is important. You'll need to submit the application form, the business plan, the cash flow. And I just put in bold here that, I mean, the quality of these really impacts your chances. And I meet some entrepreneurs that say they're just going to send out 100 applications and see what happens. And it's really just a bad approach. Like working with your coach to put a nice quality business plan together, to make sure that the history of your business trading to date is really clear and understandable is really worth it. You'll just get a better quality supporter in terms of when you're looking at finance. The expected timeline can be quite longer than what Skylight does. So Skylight, we approve loans every week. Many lenders take 2 to 5 months working through their bureaucracy to approve a loan. And some of that time might be taken having to edit your application, change it. Remember that loans are competitive. Like the startup loan program, very competitive. Not everybody can be approved. So you do need to do your research and look at different types of lenders that could work for you. If you don't get the loan, if you are turned down, you should ask for feedback on that. And often it just means going back and strengthening the application, because sometimes you have a great business, it seems profitable, it seems promising, it seems like a good thing to lend money to, and maybe that's just not coming across on the application, or there's an area of your business, a weakness that was identified that you just need to see how you can strengthen it. So don't give up. And then the last point is, yeah, you are more likely to have success as, you know, an early stage business in the TERN and Skylight community with a charitable, responsible, or government-backed lender rather than a mainstream bank, which I went over in the beginning.